My name is Alison Stewart.
My name is Jill Petrowski.
My name is Rachael Iverson.
And this is our tour of the ear.
The outer ear is called the auricle or pinna. Its main function is to improve localization of sound. The most superior part is called the helix, and just inferior to that is the scaphoid fossa. The antihelix can be seen here and has a part called the crus of the antihelix. There is also two concha, the cymboconcha and the cavum concha. The tragus is typically located in this region of the ear, but is not seen. The antitragus can be seen here, and then just to the side of that is the intertragal notch. This part of the ear is the external auditory meatus. The first 1/3 is the cartilaginous portion, which resides sebaceous and cerumen glands, which produce earwax and sweat. The next 2/3 of the external auditory meatus is the osseous portion, and then it leads to the eardrum or the tympanic membrane. The frequency sensitivity for the outer ear is 3000 Hz, while the frequency sensitivity of the external auditory meatus is 2000 to 7000 Hz. Here we have the tympanic membrane of the right ear, and we know this because the manubrium goes up, right, and away. There are 4 quadrants, including the anterior superior, posterior superior, posterior inferior, and then anterior inferior. The anterior inferior portion houses the cone of light, which is a result as an otoscopic procedure. The fibrous annulus goes along the outside of the tympanic membrane. There is also the umbo, the pars flaccida, the pars tensa, and the manubrium.
The middle ear is most sensitive to lower frequencies between 800 and 1500 Hz. This is the middle ear. It's the air-filled cavity lying between the tympanic membrane and the inner ear. Here's the tympanic membrane. On the other side are the ossicles, which are the 3 smallest bones in the body. Here we have the stapes, which footplate rests on the oval window leading to the inner ear, the incus, which is in the middle, and then finally the malleus. The malleus is connected to the tympanic membrane via its manubrium. There are 3 levels of the tympanic cavity pictured here. The first is the epitympanum or epitympanic recess, which contains the head of the malleus as well as the addus to mastoid antrum. Then we have the mesotympanum, which contains most of the rest of the landmarks of the middle ear. And lastly, the hypotympanum or the eustachian tube. The middle ear can be visualized as a 6-sided cube with 4 side walls, a floor, and a ceiling, but for this, we're going to be looking at actual pictures of the middle ear. The first wall we're going to talk about is the lateral wall, which is right here. It's made up of the tympanic membrane, which has the manubrium of the malleus lying on it, and then the squamish portion of the temporal bone. The next wall is right across from it, which is the medial wall, right over here. This is the promontory of the basal turn of the cochlea. This is the oval window underneath the footplate of the stapes. The round window is not pictured, but it would be somewhere right around here. Then we have the facial nerve and the prominence of the facial nerve canal, which can be seen on the medial wall. Above that is the prominence of the lateral semicircular canals. And then over top of the promontory of the cochlea is the tympanic nerve. Next, we're going to talk about the inferior wall, which is right down here. The inferior wall is also known as the jugular wall because it's made up of the jugular fossa, which is a depression made by the jugular vein. On the opposite end, we have the superior wall, which is up here. The superior wall is made up of the tegmen tympani, which is a thin sheet of bone separating the middle ear cavity from the meninges. Then over here, we have the anterior wall. The anterior wall is also referred to the carotid wall because it has the carotid artery canal. We also have the eustachian tube entrance, and above that, we have the canal for the tensor tympani muscle. This is the cochleariform process, the eustachian tube from the canal of the tension muscle. Lastly, we're going to talk about the posterior wall. The posterior wall is also referred to as the mastoid wall because it has the entrance to the mastoid air cells called the adytus to mastoid antrum, which is the big hole in the top, part of the epitympanic recess. Then we have the pyramidal eminence, which is this pyramid-shaped object over here. The tendon of the stapedius muscle, which is housed inside the pyramidal eminence, then goes to connect with the neck of the stapes. Another landmark on the posterior wall is the chordotympany nerve, which comes out here and then courses to connect with the anterior wall, which has been taken away for this photo. And lastly, the fossa incutus, which is hard to see, but it's where the short process of the incus makes a depression on the posterior wall. The other levels of the middle ear cavity, aside from the epitympanic recess, are the mesotympanum, which contains the majority of the landmarks of the middle ear, and the eustachian tube.
The ossicles of the middle ear work together in an impedance matching system. So they have a lever action which allows them to make sure that no energy is lost between the transmission of the acoustic signal into the inner ear. If the ossicles weren't all working together, 30 decibels would be lost and you wouldn't be able to hear anything as well.
The entrance to the inner ear is through the oval window, which is located behind the footplate of the stapes. The inner ear is a system of fluid and membranous canals filling a bony labyrinth that allows for mechanical energy of the ossicles to be transferred to liquid energy. Behind the oval window is the vestibule, or the front room to the inner ear. This vestibule leads to the cochlea, snail-shaped canals filled with both endolymph and paralymph, and the vestibular system.
Semicircular canals are responsible for angular acceleration, such as when you turn your head like this. The utricle and the saccule are responsible for linear acceleration, such like going backwards and going down.
This is the cochlea. It's divided into 3 parts: the scala vestibuli, which is closest to the oval window, the scala tympani, which is closest to the round window, and the scala media. The scala vestibuli and the scala tympani are both filled with paralymph and are actually connected at the helix of the cochlea by the helicotrema. This allows for the paralymph to move along the cochlear turns up to the apex and then move back down, where pressure is released at the round window. The organ of Corti is the end organ of hearing, located in the scala media, which is filled with endolymph. Here we see it being supported by the basilar membrane. The organ of Corti uses hair cells, both outer and inner, which are embedded into the tectorial membrane to transfer fluid energy into electric energy. They do so by being stimulated through the movement of the basilar membrane, in which the base is most sensitive to high frequencies and the apex is most sensitive to low frequencies, otherwise known as tonotopic organization. When these hair cells are stimulated, they send their neurological impulses to the brain through the cochlear part of the vestibular cochlear nerve. The vestibular system is responsible for one's sense of balance. The maculae are located in the utricle and the saccule and have calcium deposits, also known as otoliths, located on top of their hair cells encased in a gelatinous layer. The maculae are responsible for linear acceleration. Angular acceleration is facilitated by cristae, located in ampullae, which are here, at the base of the semicircular canals. The cristae and maculae also use hair cells, which are attached to nerve fibers and send information to the cerebellum as to the state of the head in space through the vestibular part of the vestibule cochlear nerve. The vestibular system is made up of a series of canals. This is the anterior canal and the posterior canal, which is connected to the utricle through the common crura. This is the lateral canal. Upon opening the cochlea and having a cross section, we see the medialis, which is the middle of the cochlea, and also have a better view of the vestibulocochlear nerve.
Thanks so much for watching!